In horror films, there are narrative conventions with every aspect of the film. These include the characters, locations, and storylines. The film techniques in horror films are widely used and are the same too, and these include the camera work, lighting, the use of colour, the editing, and the sound. Characters in horror films are more often than not used as devices for the film, either for self-awareness, comedic relief, or to nail in the fact that anything could happen. These characters are usually the dumb blonde, the jock, the nerd, and the stoner. In Final Destination 3, we see Ashley and Ashlyn. These are our dumb blonde characters. They think they are better or above everyone else. They are the first to be annoyed at Wendy when she tells people to get off the ride, and the first to die in the sunbeds. In I Know What You Did Last Summer, we see Barry. He is our jock character. After the pact with the other characters, he is the first to die for being involved in the assault of Benjamin Willis. The jock character is usually the alpha male, and because he thinks he is the strongest and will survive, he is the first character to die. In Scream, we see Randy. He is our nerd character, and he sets out the conventions to horror films and how to survive them through the rules he sets out in this clip. In Scary Movie, we see Shorty. He's our stoner character, and he's usually there for comedic relief, either because he is a funny character with the other characters, or because he is being used solely as comedic relief for the audience. The most common locations in horror films are abandoned or secluded locations or buildings, woods or forest, cemeteries, and amusement parks. All of these places represent our fears in some way. Abandoned places can be representative of people's fear of haunted houses and other paranormal activities. Woods and forests represent people's fear of the unknown. There are eerie places at night, and even the most mundane sounds, like a twig snapping, seems ominous and frightening. Cemeteries represent people's fear of either death and dying themselves, or any fear they may have that is connected to an afterlife. Amusement parks could represent a fear of clowns or heights, but I think it could also represent a contrast to the norm. Amusement parks, unlike the rest of these locations, offer something scary to us because of our natural instincts. It is human nature to be scared of the unknown, which paranormal activities, the dark, and death all come under. But a fear of clowns or heights isn't. Of course, people can be scared of anything, but I think this particular trope in horror is somehow much more sinister than the rest, because it plays on and manipulates our surface fears, and not our underlying ones, which are much more common, so the feeling of being targeted or affected by these are less because of our knowledge of how common and recycled the others are in quite a significant way. Storylines are our bread and butter of horror films. Without the screenplay and the storyline, we would have no film. Here you can see a range of different storylines typical of a number of horror films. In 2021, this could even be read as neurodiverse people being seen as wrong, unnerving, or unlikable to neurological people, especially with social interaction, masking, or conforming to standards, all being hard for the former. 9/11. People were now watching films focused on counter-terrorism, and Hollywood was focusing on US victory. Politics and society interact and interfere with each other. It is the horror genre's job to dig into this. Horror films are born out of our innate ways. They manipulate our deepest, darkest thought processes and intrude upon our idea of safety and fear combined, to inflict our own psychological pain back on ourselves. It is voluntary and wholly self-induced. The best use of different camera angles or techniques, in my opinion, is the Steadicam panning and close-ups. The iconic shot in The Shining in this clip is done with a Steadicam. The motion is as uninterrupted as it can be, and there's nothing between the camera, the audience, and the child. We are following him and expecting him to lead us somewhere. Panning is used very slowly, and this creates a very eerie atmosphere, as anything could either jump out or shock us when we reach the end of the shot, like this clip from Drag Me to Hell. Close-ups used for the very common, albeit overused at times, jump scares. This leads us on well to Dead Space though. Dead space is negative and positive space, and how and why this is used. Negative space is when there is too much room around the subject of a shot. This is used in Psycho for the scene below. She is supposed to be the main character and is supposedly the only character in this shot, but she is overshadowed by just the amount of space surrounding her. She is vulnerable and the tension is built up because we know she is in danger. Positive space is when there is too little room around the subject of a shot. We feel uneasy because of how close we are to them. Anything could interrupt this, and probably will, but not knowing when is also the thing that builds up the tension. Gels are put in front of the lights to change some aspect of the colour in the shot, or the shot entirely. Depending on the colours, the atmosphere and the mood of the film can change drastically. In horror films, it is red gels that are used most commonly. Low-key lighting is a purposely underexposed shot. The shot seems darker, more sinister, and is quicker for the audience to digest the horror of whatever or whoever is the subject of the low-key lighting. Silhouettes are used in horror films as they are dark and mysterious. We can suspect the silhouette is anyone, but we can never 100% confirm this. Another way of using them is to suggest that the silhouettes are shadows of cast out people. These people are not to be trusted. Uplighting drastically changes the look of someone's face. It makes them seem much more evil and sinister. Horror films use this lighting as a way of accurately depicting the character they want us to think is monstrous. This lighting manipulates how we see the character and their intention, as we are presented with a skewed and distorted vision of them. Uplighting drastically changes the look of someone's face. It makes them seem much more evil and sinister. Horror films use this lighting as a way of accurately depicting the character they want us to think is monstrous. This lighting manipulates how we see the character and their intention, as we are presented with a skewed and distorted vision of them. The use of colour in horror films is usually a lot of black, white or dark hues. When this is challenged, it makes us feel uneasy. We know this isn't how it should be, and there is something wrong. Editing. Pace. Fast-paced sequences leave us reliant on what might be coming next, as we want answers from the tension that has been building. We are left with a sense of urgency. Slow-paced sequences leave us feeling on edge, as we probably know what is about to happen, and yet the possible eventuality of it shocks or scares us all the same. We are left feeling uneasy. The editing techniques used are a combination of jump cuts, cutaways, fading to black, cross-cutting, quick cuts, and parallel cuts. Sound within horror films adds another dimension to the scare tactics used within horror films, whether that be because of the extensive use of sound or the near complete lack of sound.